Previously on another tale. Hailson's quiet reconnaissance of a castle claimed by the Cult of the Dragon had ended in chains. Freed by newly found allies and carried to safety by boat, he learned the fortress held more than the dragon worshippers. The cult held the castle. The Bullywugs held the Lizardfolk in fear. Their leader, Snapjaw, sought not power, but peace. An agreement was made. The Bullywug chieftain would fall. And with his death, the balance within the castle might finally shift. Now the plan is set, and the story continues. Welcome to another tale, where the dice roll ends and the story begins. We awoke the next morning and sat for a wonderful breakfast served by the Lizardfolk. We were waiting Snapjaw to say all is set. He finally arrived looking worried.
The canoes didn't arrive last night. I don't know why, but we do not have any boxes to make your ruse work.
He left again to check the shore once more, hoping to see the canoes arrive. When he was gone, the group told me that the other canoes would never arrive. They had attacked the camp where the canoes had gone to collect the boxes and killed all that were there. The canoes we arrived in were the ones Snapjaw was waiting for. This worried me. If Snapjaw found out, things could go very badly. I hate to keep secrets or lie, but this could not be admitted. The mission depended on it. Snapjaw returned and stood worried, waiting for us to work out a way of infiltrating the castle and getting past the Bullywug guards at the gatehouse and courtyard. Many plans were thought of and argued over, but I said,
"Let's keep it simple. The cult rule the castle. They are not frogs or lizard folk. Neither are we. Let us just walk in, Snapjaw and a few of his warriors in tow. If we are challenged by the frogs, we ignore them or abuse them as the cult would."
Sami then mentioned that they had a dragon cult ring that they had acquired. Thankfully, they did not mention where from. Nobby also mentioned that they had weapons from the Black Dragonborn. These could also be used, with Nobby in disguise as a prisoner to get past any cult members, if we encountered one. The plan was weak, but it was all we had. We all agreed. Snapjaw nodded. It seemed he fully trusted us to deliver our promise. We got ourselves ready. We were fully rested and resolute in our mission to go forward. Snapjaw waited outside with 8 of his warriors. I looked out of the door at Snapjaw, who nodded that it was time. We left the long hall. Nobby, the Gnoll Barbarian, with a rope loosely around his hands, was being led by Sami, the Warforged rogue. The 2 elven females, Nita the Druid and Saraleth the Eldritch Knight, followed next. Carapax the monk and I were last. We marched with purpose towards the gate, Snapjaw's party following on. As we approached the castle, the Bullywugs watched intently, but we ignored them, kept up the ruse of meaning to be there. Tia watched as they cowered out of the way as we passed. There were at least 20 of them around the gate and the inner courtyard, including some huge toad-like creatures. Sami led us in, walking as if he owned the castle, straight past the initial guards, following Snapjaw's directions. The Bullywugs either side of us just cowered out of the way. Once out of sight, we quickened our step, hoping not to meet anyone else until we could descend into the Bullywug leader's basement. We moved down a long dark corridor and into the central courtyard. It was water-damaged stonework with a green moss-type slime clinging up from the floor. There were doors to our left and right, forward and back. I asked Snapjaw.
Which one? The last on the left.
There were more frogs here and a few lizardfolk keeping out of the way. They paid us no attention as we moved over and entered the door Snapjaw led us to. Beads of sweat starting to appear on everyone's face as the pressure of going unnoticed started to show. The door swung open to reveal a great hall full of tables and the waft of food in the air. This must be the cult's mess or relaxing room, which luckily at this time, it seems breakfast had been finished, and the room was empty. Snapjaw pointed at a door to our north. We moved quietly but swiftly and opened the door. Beyond was an antechamber, swamp water covering the stones of the floor. A dampness seemed to cling in the air, and the smell of swamplands was quite overwhelming. Through an open doorway we saw the stairs leading down to our goal.
Here? Yes.
Splashing our way down the stairs, we descended into the basement, checking as far as we could into the darkness ahead, weapons now at the ready. All subterfuge was over. We were here to kill. We found ourselves in a brightly lit corridor, which seems to lead into darkness. The ceilings were relatively low, and the straight stonework walls of the castle were no more. Bare-worked rock held flickering torches, and the air was humid and warm. We moved slowly, ready to fight at any moment, not knowing what the darkness ahead would reveal. Mist flowed around our feet, and the shallow water that covered the soles of our boots. Ahead there was a 10-foot ledge, with a small mechanical crane to the side to lift cargo or passengers up to the higher level. We could not climb without it, so we enlisted the help of the lizardfolk to ferry our party up into the misty darkness above. The lack of frogs at this time had me worried. Were we going the right way? Was the leader even down here? Snapjaw's knowledge stopped at the stairs. He had never dared come down into the frogs' tunnels. He knew they would kill him for it. We reached a crossroads in the paths. I seemed to sense magic coming from the right-hand tunnel, but Nobby, using his Gnoll smell, caught the scent of frogs down the tunnel in front of us. I wanted to investigate the magic, but we had a mission to do before taking on the cult. The lizardfolk needed our help, so we pressed on, forwards to our target. The stairs in the tunnel led downwards, and the scent grew stronger for Nobby. We must be close now. The stairs opened up into a cavern, wide and long, with a tunnel leading away at the end. Mist covered the floor, surrounding the feet of 13 bullywugs. They did not see us, so our attack was fast and a complete surprise to them. Nobby ran straight into the fray, his greatsword swinging, taking down the closest frog with his first swing, and badly wounding the second. Sami joined him, merging with the shadows as he ran to Nobby's side, his rapier moving quickly with light flashing off the blade showing its movement. He took down another frog with ease. Saraleth jumped down the rest of the stairs, landing gracefully, launching magic missiles at another 2 frogs, damaging both. Nita the Druid began chanting and moving her hands, energies gathering around her as I ran to join the group. I fired my hand crossbow twice at a frog in very quick succession, both bolts going straight between his eyes. He stopped mid-run and fell into the mist, dead. As I reloaded, the monk Carapax flew past me, landing on a frog and killing him quickly with deft punches to the head. As the frog fell, he dodged back away from danger, freeing my sideline into the next target. The next frog suffered the same fate as the first I fired at, the bolt exploding out of the back of his head. 6 to go. Saraleth surged forward, the elf swinging her greatsword, causing a huge wound on the frog in front of her. Nobby, not wanting to be left out, ran and let out a growl filled with rage, and engaged 2 more frogs, giving a huge wound to the frog on his right. Sami, seeing the fight move away from him, stalked up to join Nobby and took on the frog to his friend's left, his blade seeming to boom as it struck, taking down the frog in the move. The sheer force of the hit sent necrotic damage to the frog on Nobby's right, ending another threat to the group. 4 to go, but still no sign of Scattergoo. Carapax moved forward to join Saraleth, punching the frog engaged with the elf, frog dropping, the life leaving its eyes. Carapax did not even stop to admire his work. He ran on, engaging the middle of 3 remaining frogs. As the monk reached his target, he punched it quickly twice in the head. The frog stumbled, but held onto consciousness. Carapax, as is his style, backflipped away out of reach. Nita drew her longbow. The sleek ash bow glimmered, droplets of the mist exploding from it as the arrow was released, hitting the same frog Carapax had just stunned. The frog stood no chance. As soon as its vision returned after the double punches, it saw the fletchling of the arrow protruding from between its eyes, and then darkness took it. The last 2 frogs looked on the verge of running, just seeing 11 of their group being decimated in a few short seconds. From behind them came the sounds of many footsteps, a splashing in the shallow water with grunts of exertion, as 9 more of their comrades entered the chamber at a run from the tunnel towards the rear. The 2 original frogs seemed to smile, thinking they now had the upper hand. The frogs started their attack. 2 frogs immediately engaged Saraleth, trying to overwhelm the elf. The first pushed his spear deep into Saraleth's shoulder, pulling it back and then bit her. Saraleth was barely able to push it off before any serious damage was done. The second attacked with their spear, again getting through the desperate defense of the elf. The frog tried to emulate its companion, going for a vicious bite, but only found the air as Saraleth twisted to avoid the attack. The new arrivals to the chamber drew their short bows. Nobby took 2 arrows immediately, but his rage made it look like they made no damage. A 3rd arrow sank deep into his leg, causing him to stumble. Sami also received an arrow. It slammed into his cloak, getting caught up as it flowed around the spinning rogue, but still managed to get through and sink 2 inches into his right arm. A 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th arrow missed the defensive spin. These new combatants were desperate to take this group down. Nita stepped back as a frog took aim. The arrow, though, was faster, hitting her head, but luckily she moved deftly enough that it only grazed. The wound, though, was quite significant, and she let out a small cry of pain. Another arrow flew into the space her head just vacated, flying off into the mists at the other end of the chamber. Unluckily, though, the 3rd arrow did strike home, digging deep into her left arm. The frog let out a yip, pleased at his work. Nita took a breath and steeled herself to get revenge. Carapax dodged the remaining arrows, using his quick hand movements to deflect the arrows away. I watched all of this occurring, loading my longbow. The distance was too far for my handbow. The ash bow came up, hitting the furthest frog in the chest, causing him to knock into his companion. The frog stumbled just before my 2nd arrow struck home. The first frog now looked dazed, and moved slowly, trying to continue the fight. Saraleth, after taking wounds from the 2 vicious attacks from the frogs, swung her greatsword. She was slashing at the frog on her right, and with a surge of energy he then swung again. The frog, reeling from the first attack, managed to get out of the way as the sword passed, just grazing it. Nobby, still full of rage, charged into the pack of frogs lining up to attack Saraleth. He was like a whirlwind, his greatsword swinging. Frogs ducked and swayed, trying not to get hit. One of them was not so lucky, and the greatsword nearly cut him in half. As the sword came around, Nobby's rage took control. He bit down onto the next frog's leg, tearing it off. There were only 2 frogs left in this pack, 9 in total. Then, with the mist swirling around him, Scattergoo joined the fray. He confidently stepped into the chamber, muttering an incantation and gesturing towards my group. The mist around the chamber seemed to shudder. The ground became alive as vines twisted up, reaching for the legs of my friends. Sami managed to get free. His speed and strength saved him from being caught. Nita also managed to avoid the reaching plants. Saraleth and Nobby on the far outsides of the vines stepped aside easily, outmaneuvering the attacks. Carapax was unfortunately looking towards his next target as the vines surrounded his legs, holding him in place. I was luckily too far, but was not quick enough to warn my teammates. Sami jumped out of the vines as he landed, swung his rapier at the nearest frog, narrowly missing. Carapax fought against his restraints. With an immense show of strength, he managed to break free. Nita ran forward to get away from the seeking vines and attacked the nearest frog with her shillelagh. The weapon coming down on its head. As it hit, there was a large crack, and the frog fell. Its brains turned to mush under the power of the strike. The bullywugs surged forward, spears at the ready. The first one to get to the elf Nita tried to stab with his spear, fortunately missing. He was joined by another, biting down on her shoulder, causing a minor wound. The melee was fast, but Nita seemed to be just quicker. Another group of frogs attacked Nobby, but he managed to move and parry all of their attacks. Sami took a hit as both groups fought in close proximity. A spear sliced into his thigh. Saraleth, just on the outskirts of the mass melee, also managed to dodge any damage from the charge. Scattergoo was holding at the back of his soldiers. I could not see him to make a shot. I drew my longbow trying to help my friends. I hit one of the frogs straight through the chest. Before he hit the floor dead, my next arrow was en route to another target, smashing into its shoulder. Saraleth brought her greatsword around, grazing another frog, stepped back and closed her eyes. A shimmer around her body. Wounds closed as energy rippled around her. Nobby got hold of another frog, smashing it into the ground with his greatsword. The next frog tried to help its friend, but Nobby snarled and bit it for its troubles. Scattergoo, seeing his soldiers fall, ran forward and bit Sami, wounding his shoulder. Scattergoo's spear flashed towards the rogue, but Sami managed to turn and watch it stab past him. Sami fought back, rapier swirling in front of the leader of the bullywugs. He rushed forward and dove his rapier into his chest. Scattergoo howling in pain. Carapax jumped out of the vines, landing amongst 2 frogs, his punches flying into them, killing both. As before, he backflipped away from reprisal. Nita, now having one of the frogs next to her falling to the monk, hit the frog in front of her. A green dust seemed to infuse around the wound as the frog took its last breath and fell into the mist. She moved her hands quickly, speaking aloud, causing a spray of spores, hitting the next frog in line, making it cough and splutter. The frog tried to fight her back, but the spores took all of their effectiveness from them. Nobby took a bite from a badly hurt frog, while Saraleth took a small bite and a spear from another haggard bullywug. The frog numbers were vastly down, and they all looked like they wanted to run, but Scattergoo was with them. They could still win. I fired my longbow at Scattergoo, trying to distract him, hoping a teammate can get to him. Saraleth saw the hit and fired magic missiles at him, hoping to end the frog's fight, but they barely hurt him. He was angered, though, and growled his fury towards Sami. Nobby swung his greatsword again, finally finishing off the frog on his right, the greatsword cleaving into the frog's shoulder. Nobby looked for another target. He was in his element in the battle fray. One of the last remaining bullywugs got too close and received a huge bite from Nobby's fangs. Scattergoo bit out with his anger at Sami, narrowly missing, frustration clearly on his face. Scattergoo's spear flashed towards Sami, but he was still quicker and dodged, bringing his green-flamed rapier up and forward. Scattergoo took the rapier to the stomach, another roar of pain coming from him, fire jumping around his body. The fire jumped and then to the frog next to Scattergoo. It too got covered in green flame, killing it instantly. Poison splurts from Scattergoo, covering Sami's arm, causing him to sharply pull his rapier back. Carapax ran forward again, punching the last frog near Nita, killing him quickly. Then he launched himself at the injured Scattergoo, punching him and jumping away. Scattergoo was barely standing at this point, his soldiers all killed. Justice had been very swift on behalf of the Lizardfolk. Nita ran forward, spraying poison from her hands towards the Bullywug leader, but it did not seem to harm him further. I ran forward, raising my hand crossbow, firing a bolt straight into him. As it hit, I reloaded, firing another into the ceiling. The bolt ricocheted, came straight down through the fish-head crown of the once Bullywug leader, piercing through Scattergoo's brain, finally ending his reign. The group all took a breath. It had been a quick but bloody fight. Tia would be proud of the justice that prevailed this day. Smiles all around, we started to search the chamber, finding a trapped chest in the far corner. Sami managed to disarm it, carefully moving the hasp of the chest in a series of directions. Upon inspection, he found only 2 spellbooks. Who they belonged to was a mystery, but we took them with us. Maybe they could help one of us learn something, or maybe we could make some good gold from it. Our mission down here was simple. Kill Scattergoo and bring his head to Snapjaw. He would use it to prove to his warriors that they now could beat the remaining bullywugs and stop their persecution from the evil frogs. Nobby swung his greatsword, taking the head as a trophy for the Lizardfolk. Snapjaw was amazed as he received the head. He showed the warriors with him and told them,
"Let's go kick them out of the castle."
The warriors cheered, eager to right the wrongs and get their revenge. As we started to leave for the surface, I remembered the sense of magic I had in the northern tunnel. We had another mission here too, to defeat the cult. They had interest down here. This could be it. We searched the northern chamber and found a teleportation circle. We decided to come back later and further examine the device. Right now, we needed to help the Lizardfolk defeat their enemies. We ran back out of the tunnels and up the stairs, back into the castle proper, hoping to get away quickly. As we breached the top of the stairs, we saw the food hall was half full of the dragon cult. all resting and eating. In a chamber to the right were 10 centipedes rushing towards us. Saraleth panicked and swung her greatsword at the closest cult member. Surprised, he swung back at her, causing a small wound to her arm. Nita shouted, "No!" I just sighed and said, "Oh no." Nita thought quickly and rushed towards Saraleth, casting Healing Word on the cult member, healing his wound. She then turned to her fellow elf and admonished her for attacking him. Saraleth told her that the cultist looked at her body in the wrong way, so he deserved it. Nita explained that she told her last time that she could not hurt people for looking at her body. The cultist looked a bit sheepish and lowered his head. Nita apologized for our friend, hoping her quick thinking and actions will sway the cultist into not attacking us. They still did not know who we were at this time. Sami was blocking the door at this time, centipedes rushing towards him. I drew my longbow and fired over Sami's head. The arrow went straight through the creature's eye, killing it instantly. I drew again, firing at the next in line, trying to get through the door. Hitting it in the head, also dropping it dead to the floor. Sami sighed and complained about the cleanliness of the castle, as he drove his green-fired rapier forward, killing the next centipede outright. The one behind it also caught in flames and went down. Nobby flew through the door, his greatsword moving in great arcs, taking down 2 more. He then used his strength to bite another, badly hurting it. Carapax followed Nobby through the door, engaging the last remaining creatures, punching as he went, blow after blow landing, destroying what was left of the centipedes. That chamber being clear, we now looked to the food hall and the cultists. Snapjaw, wielding the head of his enemy, rushed straight into the food hall. He was followed by his warriors. They all ignored the cultists and were running for the door back into the courtyard. The cultists stood, dumbfounded as to what was going on. They watched as we all started to follow the Lizardfolk out. As the Lizardfolk entered the courtyard, they immediately descended upon any bullywug there. It seemed the slaughter had begun. We all ran to keep up with them, rushing out of the door to join the lizard warriors and keep our end of the pact. I was the last out and made sure to close the door behind me, leaving the confused cultists to their wonderment. As the other lizardfolk in the courtyard saw Snapjaw wielding the head of Scattergoo, they joined the fight. Bullywugs, hearing the commotion, flooded out of nearby rooms, but they did not stand a chance. The lizardfolk and my group descended on them quickly, killing at least 2/3 of them before they started to run. The lizardfolk cheered and continued to chase them out of the castle, as my group took a breath, realizing we had now completed the mission of justice. Now, though, came the real fight. Now comes the cult of the dragon. This chapter is closed, but the campaign is far from over. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the dark, leave a like to keep the archives open. Subscribe so you don't miss where the path leads next. There is always another tale.